All-electric homes aren't just clean and healthy, they save energy and money too. Lucky you, the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, or DCSEU, makes home electrification easier and more affordable than ever. Affordable as in district residents can get up to $15,000 off upgrades. Income qualified folks, no cost. Get rebates for heat pumps that warm and cool efficiently. Induction stoves that boil water faster than Donna Summer can say, well, hot stuff. But funding will not last, so visit dcscu.com/electric and bust a move on energy-efficient electrification for your home.
Sometimes the most meaningful gifts or decorations aren't just regular old family pictures. I'm talking about your treasured high school football jersey, a ticket from your first concert, or a flyer for a loved one's art show. These are your most sentimental possessions, and they can be protected and immortalized by the perfect frame. You know, I just got an old passport of my dad's framed. He died a couple years ago, and I don't know why. This really spoke to me. Luckily, FrameBridge makes it easy and affordable to custom frame just about anything. Just pick the perfect frame for your piece from their curated selection of styles, and their design experts will do the rest. And they'll ship it right to your doorstep for free on orders over $100. Best of all is FrameBridge's happiness guarantee. If you're not 100% happy with your piece for any reason, they'll make it right. Visit framebridge.com or one of 8 local FrameBridge stores at 14th Street, Union Market, Georgetown, Bethesda, Old Town, Clarendon, McLean, or the Mosaic District, and start framing. Today on CityCast DC, we're talking about Trump and RFK Stadium. We're talking about Congress and its wild new rules targeting DC traffic regulations. And we're talking about lanternflies, the 2025 Winged Nuisance of the Year. Plus, in a members-only fourth segment, we'll talk about AI and romance for the DC crowd. I'm here with Axios' Junaid Deal and my CityCast colleague, Julia Caron. Today is Friday, July 25th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Julia.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Junaid.
Hey, Mike.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
Great to be on.
So listen, before we start, today's episode is sponsored by NACE Law Group. You've heard me yammer about them a bunch because they're a longtime supporter of the pod. They used to be known as Paulson and NACE. Well, they're the same great team, just with a new name. That's NACE Law Group. Thank you for your support. All right, so you guys, big news on the long gestating effort to bring the Washington Commanders, if that's what they're really, if that's really their name, back to RFK. The news is that DC Council Chair Phil Mandelson, who was kind of the most prominent skeptic of the deal, has said he'd schedule a vote next week, and it sort of looks like the fix is in. He and most other skeptics maintained the whole time they were just trying to get a better deal, and maybe they think they've got one. But the rest of the context of the last week, I think, is part of this story. You know, I wrote about how Trump abruptly last weekend said he would use his power, it's not quite clear what power, but his power to nix the stadium unless the Commanders reverted to their former name, the Washington Redskins. This was sort of culture war red meat that may or may not have been intended to distract his crowd from being obsessed with the Jeffrey Epstein story. According to my reporting, at least, just about the only happy people about it were people who wanted to kill the deal because they thought, you know, this name that a lot of people objected to, that people say is racist, that was one of the things that kept the city from trying to do a stadium deal back when they had that name. And if they go back to it, this might kill the deal. And if you are an activist who doesn't want a stadium on that site and wants something else, you think this might help. But now, I don't know, Junaid, you've been in there, but it looks to me like what actually happened was that Trump threatening to mess around with it kind of scared everyone into action. And they were like, let's get this thing sealed before he can reopen it and demand that, you know, the stadium be called Melania Trump Stadium or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Pandora's box if President Trump gets involved, because if not the name, maybe something else will come up that he wants. I don't know, maybe he wants a Trump hotel or I don't want to throw out ideas that manifest into something real. But the idea, I think, is let's get this done and let's avoid the federal government trying to get it done for us. And then we don't have really a say on what happens at that site. So, I mean, even on the name issue, like Council Chairman Mendelson said that would not be a problem for him if the team decided to go back to the old name. he feels like that's not a poison pill for the deal. And the mayor similarly doesn't seem to really care much at all. If
The mayor was among those who said, like, that name is keeping the team from coming back to town back in 2020.
Yeah, and Mendelsohn kind of said, well, a lot of that was about the old owner as well, kind of just Dan Snyder, the hatred around how he was managing, owning the team. It had a lot more to do with him, perhaps, than just the name alone. But yeah, the pressure, I think, has worked. And I think NBC4 reported a letter from James Comer, the powerful House Oversight Chairman, pressuring Mendelsohn to get this deal done. That seems to have had a influential impact as well, coming directly from Congress, which controls the district's budget ultimately.
So, one question I have about all this is we're going to talk in our second segment about congressional interference in a bunch of different ways, especially when it comes to money and finances. Are there ways that they could tinker with this deal? I know that DC has this 99-year land lease for the site. Could they revoke it? Are there ways that Trump and Congress could insert themselves into this despite, Mendelsohn's best efforts right now?
So I think you got to subdivide that question. I hate to say, I always hate that preamble. But look, Trump and Congress have some specific powers. The legislation that gave that land to DC to redevelop does not have like another stage where the president gets to approve it or not approve it. But, like as we know from Doge, GSA has been breaking leases all the time. So if they've given DC a lease, they could break it. Maybe we see him in court, but that could happen. As we know from what's going on with the Fed and Jerome Powell, the White House is willing to use its control over these sort of obscure boards that oversee land use in DC to mess with people for political reasons, right? So they are going after the Fed over its building and whether it has violated the plans that were approved by the National Capital Planning Commission. What the real reason they're going after him is they're having a political fight over interest rates. So in theory, a president, and particularly this president, has any number of ways to screw around with something he doesn't like. The other way to look at that, though, is, as with so many other decisions facing anyone in government in DC, a little voice in the back of their head says, is this the thing that's going to do it? Is this going to be the excuse for them to get rid of home rule? Is this going to be the thing for them to abolish local democracy? These idiots couldn't even get done a basic stadium deal that's good for business. Therefore, we have to take over the administration of the entire city. So that's this sort of other prod. And it comes up in weird ways. And I'm sure it's in the back of everyone's head where they're thinking, we don't want to be blamed for that. And I think both these things assume a lot of bad faith. But that is the context in which all of these powerful, or I guess not so powerful, local interests operate.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the commanders were worried about. They didn't want the president to get involved. They were telling the council, they were telling the council to get this deal approved, and the council kind of took that as, haha, look, they're just trying to force our hand. We got, time here to really look into this deal, get a better deal for taxpayers. But lo and behold, maybe they don't have so much time, and now they're kind of rushing to get it approved, I think, is the now premise they're operating under.
Well, that's the other thing is that I think some of these, maybe the council undersell their own juice in the matter, because yes, it is true. The feds could take over the whole process, right? They could break the lease with DC. They could do a deal themselves with the commanders. But there are some sweeteners for the commanders in this deal, since they can't afford to build the stadium themselves, they say, where the city pays for some of it with tax revenue they would have collected, i.e. it forgoes this tax revenue in order to fund the stadium. Well, that's local tax revenue. The feds don't have that to give away. So the feds would have to find the $1 billion someplace else, which, could become a politically contentious thing.
Yeah, which what are you going to do? Tax every tax-paying American to get to the $1 billion? I'm sure that would go over well in polling.
Right. So, what Christina Henderson said was, she said that she had said to the commanders, yeah, you guys can go with Trump, but you're not getting anything from the DC taxpayer if you do that.
I will say, though, and Councilmember Henderson knows more about Congress than I do, for sure. I mean, she worked there. I just thought Congress can go into the budget and put in what they want. So if the council doesn't approve the deal and Congress decides we're going to do it instead, we're going to make this deal go through with the commanders and they need $1 billion. Well, I mean, could they not just go into the city's budget and write into it that and tinker and put in there that local funds X amount will need to be spent on this development project?
They could, unless it was as part of the congressional budget process, it would be subject to the filibuster. They also have a really slim, Republicans also have a really slim majority, and there's far right budget hawks, deficit obsessives who might choose this to make a stink about. And in the meantime, the team is sitting there sweating. They've got financing, I'm sure, that they're worried about. They're getting wooed from Virginia or wherever. So yes, all of that is in theory possible, but it is, I mean, there's a reason the team wanted to get the deal done with DC and have it go forward, because for all of the bluster from Comer and from Trump, it's not as good for the team if it goes the way where the feds take over the deal.
Gotcha. So it's not as easy as they can just write in DC has to spend $1 billion. There are a lot of votes to count and a lot of.
I mean, I think you can't take that as a given. You can't. I mean, yes, they could in theory do that, but it would be, look, it's pretty tough to, it's a pretty tough time for the White House right now, and Congress is out till September. Is that really a thing anybody wants to spend a whole lot of energy on?
Well, it does look like Phil Mendelssohn, behind the scenes with the commanders, negotiated some kind of tweak to the deal. So now he wanted a bit of that tax revenue generated on that site to be shared with the district to go back into City Hall's coffers. It looks like there will be some meaningful tweaks that could set up this vote that we talked about for next week.
Yeah. And I mean, look, before we jump, I think anytime some sort of big deal like this is rolled out and presented to a city council or a state legislature or whatever, I assume that they write the deal knowing that they're going to have to make some tweaks in order to let these legislators save face and claim that they, got a better deal for the taxpayer. And that's sort of priced in already.
Yeah, 100%. I think so.
One thing that Congress could tack on for $10 a month is a sweet, sweet membership to CityCast DC. I don't think they'd do it, but maybe they could. I'm dreaming of it.
I mean, it's just a rounding error on the federal budget.
It's not close to the $1 billion I need. In all seriousness, now is a great time to become a CityCast DC member. You get sweet perks like no ads, pretty nice. You also get members-only events. We had a really cool happy hour downtown with a bunch of members. That was awesome. I was a big fan. But overall, it helps make us do the show that we all love. So go to membership.citycast.fm, sign up. Believe me, it's cheaper than the stadium.
When someone else's negligence changes your life forever, figuring out what to do next can feel overwhelming. You need lawyers who won't back down. NACE Law Group has been winning serious injury and wrongful death cases in D.C. for decades. They don't just settle, they fight for real justice. And they're not afraid to take cases to court to get it. Because when you're facing medical bills, lost wages, and unimaginable pain, good enough isn't good enough. You might remember them as Paulson and Nace. It's the same trusted lawyers, just a new name. If you need someone in your corner, reach out to NACE Law Group for a free, no-obligation consultation. Visit WashingtonDCLawyers.com or call 202-463-1999. That's 202-463-1999.
This episode of CityCast is sponsored by Babbel. Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, maybe even a whole new life. So why not start that journey today? You can start speaking a new language with confidence thanks to Babbel's conversation-based technique that quickly teaches you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel. Just one of the 12 languages you can learn with it, including Dutch, French, Italian, which is going to be next for me, Turkish, and Russian. I love the interactive dialogues that Babbel has, which allow me to practice what I've learned right away, and also the speech recognition function, which makes sure I'm getting the pronunciation just right, which honestly, usually I'm not. Also, I love that Babbel's lessons always cover actual things that I talk about in the real world, like food, talking to people I've just met, and also food. Staying motivated to learn a new language has never been easier thanks to real-time feedback, progress trackers, and handy visualizations in only 10 to 15 minutes a day on Babbel's mobile app or website. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
All right, so in other DC versus the world news, the Congress working on the budget that would take effect in October has passed a bunch of riders. This is a perennial in Washington of, often about abortion or needle exchange. This time it gets a lot bigger and involves guns on the metro. They're going to be okay. And traffic cameras, they want to get rid of them. Can you explain sort of what precisely does this language say? And is this going to happen?
There are a whole, I think, dozen or so things that would change DC laws or revoke them or repeal them. So this is a committee that is, I think it's fair to say, there's just at the start of things, there's a funding bill that's expected to pass in the fall out of Congress to avert another shutdown. And the sort of first recommendations coming out of this committee include a bunch of things that would affect DC. So one of them would allow out-of-state concealed carry permit holders to carry concealed handguns in DC and on the metro. That's one thing. It would ban traffic speed cameras and traffic enforcement cameras, which is one thing that's been floated before. It makes a ton of money for the district. So that would blow, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars of budget money out of the city. So TBD how that's going to shake out. There are some other things like DC Tag. If you went to school in DC, it gives students up to $10,000 a year toward tuition at public colleges outside the city. That program would be halved in funding to just $20 million. And Congress would continue blocks on DC spending local funds toward abortions for low-income women and a block on legalizing the tax and sale of recreational marijuana.
Ah, yes. The Harris rider, which is the most famous one that we know.
The Maryland congressman who has banned DC from legalizing marijuana recreational sales as they exist in Maryland now. And DC's assisted suicide death with dignity law would be repealed, an example of a law being repealed. There are some other things, Mike. DC would not be able to ban right turns on red, very hyper-local traffic law management.
Is this just so Congress people can get to their office faster? Like getting rid of the speed cameras? You're allowed to do right turn on red?
That would almost seem more practical than...
So I wrote about this like a year ago, right? And when DC first permitted right turns on red, it was in the 70s. A lot of places were doing it. It was a conservation measure because it was like, gas is expensive and people don't want to waste time idling at a red light when they could turn. And members of Congress really pushed for that. And during the hearings, they would say, like, my commute to Bethesda is being really delayed by having to wait at red lights. And this time, I'm sure this has inconvenienced some people, but I would not make it a purely personal thing. I think this is just culture war red meat. This is these blue places want to protect bicyclists and pedestrians at the expense of delaying all American drivers from being able to drive around. And in a bunch of states, like in Arizona, I think, and in Tennessee, the state legislatures forbade big cities in the state. I think in Indiana, the legislatures forbade big cities in the state from banning right turns on red. So this is sort of a national right-wing culture war issue having to do with the politics of cars versus bicycles and pedestrians. It is obviously, as you say, it's like a super ridiculously hyper-local issue. Like nobody sends people up to Congress to mess around with traffic regulations in mid-sized American cities. But here we are.
Here we are, and this is going to work through the congressional process. But Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, I guess I should say her office said this in a statement, that this was, quote, like the most unreasonable and patronizing bill she has seen in her long career representing DC. And I mean, I think it's fair to say we can expect these not all to make the final bill, but I don't know. I mean, it Republicans do have control of the Senate. I don't think they had full control when some of these ideas first came out, and now they do.
So I got to ask, though, you mentioned Norton. You know, she's been the subject of a lot of reporting about her alleged decline. She's twice said she'd run again, only to have her office walk back the statement. She's clearly, physically appears diminished. And I'm wondering, she's been very effective over her career at stopping some of the embarrassing things like this. If she was at the top of her game, would this have even gotten this far? And would we be in better shape for stopping it? I mean, it's a hypothetical, but you watch the stuff. So what do you think?
I mean, all I can say is I think that people around her think that. People in DC government wish that they had a delegate who could be more personally involved. In the absence of Norton, I know Mayor Bowser's office has spent more time on the Hill, which is typically something mayors don't do, primarily because Norton wouldn't allow it. She wanted to be the one who would always be taking the lead on fighting these things or advocating for the city. So could she have stopped them from even coming out? I mean, it's hard to say also because we live in a world where you get a lot of these messaging culture war bills coming out of Congress that even a lot of Republicans kind of roll their eyes at, like, bills to rename Dulles Airport after Trump, or just random things just to make headlines and curry favor with Trump and stir up the base and get headlines on conservative media. So we live in that era, and that, I think, motivates some of these provisions as well. I don't know what Norton could do from the onset, but her office maintains that her staff is ready to go and that they will fight these things. And they do have a success record in the past few years, but it's a different Congress now. So it's really hard to tell.
I was going to say this comes at a time when, like, Eleanor Holmes Norton again has said, like, she's going to rerun for the seat, but this time she's got a challenger. Her name is Kinney Zalesny. She filed paperwork. She's a writer and political strategist. If some of these negotiations, like, fall through, is that ammo for Zalesny to be like, we need something new. We need to build on a legacy of getting stuff done?
I mean, who knows? But the bigger question is, like, why haven't actual people who've already got a political following and a base and a track record of winning elections, why aren't any of them stepping up? And it's a very, complicated, delicate dance because nobody wants to be seen as the one sticking in the shiv. Junaid, one of your colleagues, reported this week that Eleanor said again that she's going to run again. And this time, I don't think her office walked it back.
Andrew Solander, our Hill reporter at Axios, caught her in the hallway, asked her her plans, and she said she was going to run. And it's kind of like maybe her office stops commenting on it because the principal, the person herself, keeps saying she's going to run. Her office has previously walked that back. I mean, maybe you just take the stance of let her words speak for herself, and then if she changes her mind, she's, that's anyone's prerogative. They can change their mind and say, I'm not running anymore. But yeah, we're in a weird situation here.
Do you think people should ask her that question?
I mean, you wrote a column about this. I saw that. And I think so. I'm on the camp of you ask lawmakers those questions. And if their staff is walking it back, then then the public should judge. Isn't that a little curious?
Right. Contradictory.
Totally, yeah. And they're not saying why there's a disconnect between Norton's own words and her office's words.
When Andrew grabbed her in the hallway this week, he asked her if she's going to run again. Did they talk about anything else, particularly about these riders?
I don't know, actually. It may have been before the riders. I don't remember, actually.
Yeah, so and that's where what people have said to me is, this is a person who she used to have very good intel, so they sort of knew what was coming down the pike, so there weren't surprises. And the very idea that these riders, all of a sudden city officialdom finds out, hey, they're voting on this tonight, early this week. That's sort of an indication that, like, maybe it's because, obviously the Republicans are very different than they used to be, but something has gone wrong with the sort of radar system.
Yes, that's true. And that's one of the big roles of that office is to, in lieu of having a vote, you kind of have to be that radar system.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
As a sports fan, I have to confess. Sometimes the game gets kind of boring. That's when I unfold my Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 and use multi-window viewing on its large screen. Boring game? I'm checking out my fantasy baseball league at the same time. Score still 1-0? I'm replying to emails in the other window, scoring points with the boss. Semifinals finally getting exciting? I'm buying tickets to the finals and booking my flights. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
Okay, it's very different subject. I was at Fort Reno on Monday night. I was talking to a friend, and all of a sudden she said, "Oh my God, a lanternfly just landed on my lips." And this was the first I'd heard of lanternflies, but apparently everyone knows about them because lots of other people started speaking up. They are apparently a great scourge and danger to us all, or at least danger to our environment. Julia, can you, what's the deal? What do we need to know about lanternflies?
Okay, so spotted lanternflies aren't actually flies. They're actually a kind of grasshopper. They have these wings and this kind of beautiful red speckled body. I actually think they're very pretty. Unfortunately, they're an invasive species native to China and Vietnam and India. They've been spreading throughout the mid-Atlantic since 2014. They were first discovered in Pennsylvania, but basically these things populate like crazy. There have been infestations in Pennsylvania and New York and New Jersey, Virginia, Delaware, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Maryland, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and here. So these things go bonkers.
What do they do that's bad? What's wrong with having a lanternfly around if they're so pretty?
So their diet mostly consists of tree sap. So it's sucking the sap out of the tree to start, and the tree needs that sap. It needs the nutrients and stuff. But it also creates almost this sticky shell on the outside of the tree, and that's really bad. And basically, one of the indirect impacts of the lanternflies includes, because of that sugary waste on the tree, there's this fungus that grows. It's called sooty mold, which, my God, sounds gross. And it can entirely cover the plant or the tree, and it can't grow, and it can result in dieback. Basically, they also have issues when it comes to agricultural crops. Apparently, it can devastate them and reduce yield and quality. Basically, some spotted lanternfly aggregations can be really large and become a nuisance to homeowners and the public. We got a photo from our sales guy, Mark, and there were lanternflies all over a tree in his neighborhood. And it looks like bark when their wings are closed. So it's kind of hard to spot, but they're everywhere. Junate, have you seen them?
Yeah, I'm seeing them in Rock Creek Park. I'm noticing them. They're still not that many in my view. I remember going to a friend's wedding 2 years ago up in New York, and they were everywhere. It was ridiculous. They were landing on everyone's suits, and it was crazy. I haven't seen that just yet down south in DC, but I'm not looking forward to that possibility.
So one last question. Say I look out at my yard and I see, which I don't have, but let's say I had a yard and I look out at it and I see my favorite beloved tree with lanternfly evidence all over it. What do I do?
You got to kill it.
Kill the fly?
Yes, murder is allowed in this case. U.S. Department of Agriculture says you're allowed to do it. D.C.'s Department of Transportation, Urban Forestry.
But there's thousands of them, right?
There are thousands of them. If you see a normal bug, on the ground, just chilling, stomp on it, squish it, do whatever. The harder part is that they come in all of these different life stages. So there's these early nymphs and late nymphs. If they're in the nymph stage, kill them. They basically look like these small, almost beetle-like things that climb on trees. If you find an egg mass, this is a thing that's going to look like bark, and it kind of looks like melting goo coming off of a tree. It's really gross. If you see this egg mass thing, smash it, then scrape the mass, the thing that you just destroyed, into a plastic bag full of hand sanitizer or rubbing alcohol to make sure that they're dead, zip the bag shut, and then throw them in the trash. Apparently, pressure washing is also a good way to remove the masses if they're really clung on there because of the sticky sap stuff. But also, there is a reporting mechanism that DC's Department of Urban Forestry has. We'll provide that link in the show notes, but basically, you can report how many you've killed. Was it mass murder? Was it single homicide? You know, it's all good, and you can name the block and the street intersection. All good. So just report it to DDOT and Urban Forestry in this case.
All right, today our paid subscribers get a bonus 4th roundup chat about DC singles getting romantic with AI bots. If you want to be sure you always get the full episode, become a member. Head to membership.citycast.fm and sign up. It's only $10 a month, and members get ad-free listening, exclusive member events, and an extra events newsletter every week. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Priyanka Tilve, Annie Reese, Julia Caron, and Ash Durbin. Newsletter editors Kayla Cote-Stemmerman and Elizabeth Kama wrote our fabulous newsletter Hey DC this week. And our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer, from Politico. Music is by Alex Roldan, with additional music from S2 Cool, Hip Color, Rue Walker, and Rosedale from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. If you enjoyed the show, text your friend who thinks lanternflies are too beautiful to kill. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.